Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my presentation in support of Budget 2021 and wish to take this opportunity to congratulate the Honourable Minister with responsibility for finance and his team for their outstanding and phenomenal work in preparing this budget. And wish to commend the Honourable Minister for his stamina in delivering his 4 hours 40 minutes presentation. I wish to note that the Honourable Member who opened the debates here today mentioned that the Honourable Minister did not thank his team. And while that has been debunked already because we have the extract from his speech, and anybody watching at home can easily find the speech where his gratitude was expressed, I bring that up to make this point, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the opposition can lie or can speak of an untruth that can be so easily debunked, how can we trust anything that comes from that side of the House? And the people know this, and that is why they are untrustworthy. Mr. Speaker, when I was sworn in as a member of this Honourable House on the 1st of September 2020, I anticipated and was eagerly looking forward to the intellectual quality of the contributions and debates I would be exposed to. I had every intention of learning and absorbing as much knowledge as I can from the senior and career politicians and lawmakers who sit in this House, and had high hopes for the younger politicians like myself who would be afforded the opportunity to learn and contribute fresh ideas that would unite our people and further enhance the development of our country. But, Mr. Speaker, while the honourable members on the government side of the House have not disappointed and have lived up to expectations, I cannot, in good conscience, say the same for the opposite side of the House. Contributions from the opposition are void of content and substance. They seem to have a lack of understanding of even the most elementary concepts of what is a budget and what a budget is supposed to do. And as a result, Mr. Speaker, have resorted to presenting absolute falsehoods and are relying on obstructionist, racist, vile, divisive behavior and rhetoric to once again mislead their supporters and score cheap political points. Case in point, the speaker that went immediately before me. What a disservice, Mr. Speaker, they continue to do to their supporters and this country. Any functioning democracy needs a strong, competent, capable, and honest opposition. That is how a democracy works, and how governments are held accountable, and how the people of the country get the greatest benefit. Not this clown show that goes on here in this honourable House. APNU AFC's agenda and intention is to destruct, destroy, and dismantle any good thing that comes to this House. This is evident in their failure to support good bills that came to the floor of this National Assembly only recently. Bills with a human touch, Bills that show that as a government, we care about bringing relief to our people. Mr. Speaker, the Small Business Amendment Act 2020, which paved the way for small business to access at least 20% of government's procurement of goods, services, and works. That bill, Mr. Speaker, leveled the playing field and eliminated the disadvantages of the procurement process. One of the common criticisms of the PPPC government, and you heard it here today again, one of the common criticisms is that PPP likes big business. But here the PPP was encouraging and creating the appropriate conditions for the small man to participate. And what did they do, Mr. Speaker? They stayed away, they absconded from that debate. They made no contributions, they had no input or offered any recommendation on how we can further improve the conditions for small businesses to operate. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, with the Deceased Persons Administration Amendment Bill 2020, which lifted the burden off of poor families who, after having lost a loved one, no longer has to apply to the court for letters of administration or incur the financial burden of hiring an attorney to do so on their behalf, as long as the estate does not exceed $750,000. And further, thanks to the amendment, a bank manager may pay to a claimant from a deceased person's savings bank account a sum not exceeding that same amount. This, again, was another caring, thoughtful initiative of our government, and dare I say, an initiative of the Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Anil Nandalal, Senior Counsel. Mr. Speaker, the opposition did not see it fit to participate and contribute to these meaningful amendments to the law that would ease the pressure on poor people, because our government would get credit for passing these amendments. They chose to boycott, further demonstrating and ratifying their ill intentions in this House through their unwillingness to support bills and initiatives that benefit our people. So they have no authority to speak to the measures in this budget because they cannot be trusted. It is clear as day, they do not put the people first. They are not concerned with the welfare of the people of our country. They are consumed with fighting us and trying to make the PPP look bad. But it's not going to work, Mr. Speaker. The people are watching, and they know who is looking out for them. They know which government has their back. Mr. Speaker, I turn my attention now to Budget 2021. Mr. Speaker, this budget totals $383.1 billion, but notably with no tax increases. Significantly, the annualized sum total of all of the budget measures from the 2020 and 2021 budgets combined is $90 billion. While the APNU AFC had increased tax collection, just the increase, by $88 billion annually. In contrast, Mr. Speaker, from August to now, just 6 months, we have put back into the pockets of Guyanese $90 billion in annual savings. But let us talk about housing. APNU and AFC's entry into government in 2015 marked the end of the housing sector. Permit me to elaborate. PPPC's government housing budget. I know the honorable member who spoke before me went back to 2000, but I'm going to bring it more recent. PPPC's government housing budget in 2013, and I'm quoting this so I can put it into context, was $3.2 billion. In 2014, it is $4.4 billion. Just to give you a general sense of what the budgetary allocation for housing usually amounts to. In stark contrast, Mr. Speaker, APNU AFC's housing budget in 2015 was reduced to $1.9 billion. Let us not forget, there was no Ministry of Housing and Water, there was no clear housing policy, there was no vision, there was no housing drive. They changed ministers like they changed their clothes, and hence the housing sector and the housing ministry fell apart. So let's talk about the record. In 2016, they attempted to redeem themselves, and they allocated a whopping $5.8 billion to housing. But, Mr. Speaker, the story of that year would be comical if it wasn't so tragic. And so, Mr. Speaker, Stabrook News, January 14, 2017, carried this headline. CH&PA spent only 12% of budgeted $5.8 billion in 2016. Mr. Speaker, if this isn't incompetence, then I don't know what is. And the housing minister at the time, Ms. Valerie Patterson, said she was definitely not happy to report. So if she isn't happy, I don't know what about the people. And she blamed CH&PA for the shortcomings and attributed the shortcomings to the agency being plagued by numerous human resource challenges, including unfilled position, lack of capacity in some regards, and untimely decision-making. She's the minister, Mr. Speaker. Who is she talking about? Who has to make the decisions? Who has to spend the money? Who has to implement the housing policies? And so, Mr. Speaker, she was blaming everybody but herself. But, Mr. Speaker, it was the same staff who was there in 2016 that is there today. We didn't fire anybody. We didn't fire any technical staff. It's the same people who are there today executing our mandate. It is the same technical people that designed and are bringing to completion the Eccles to Diamond Bypass Road, and that have already designed and begun procurement for the new 4-lane highway linking Mandela and Eccles. It is the same technical people who work and design to prepare and allocate lands, to allocate 3,600 house lots in our first 4 months in office. The only difference, Mr. Speaker, is that now we have a competent government in place. Vision, competence, and leadership is what was missing, Mr. Speaker, but it has been restored because the PPPC is back in office. And so, Mr. Speaker, it gets worse. And so in 2017, they weren't taking any chances. They didn't want to be embarrassed again and have to return the money to finance. So they decided they just wouldn't give CH&PA any money. Volder Lawrence, who presented the budget in 2017, said, and I quote, "The authority has to access its own funds, no allocations from central government, because, sir, they simply had no vision for the housing sector, and so they wouldn't be able to spend the money even if it was allocated." And so, if you want to talk about track record, the Honorable Member Duncan, who brought up track record, if you want to talk about track record, let us make an honest assessment of the track record. It is public knowledge, and the senior minister with responsibility for finance mentioned it in his budget presentation. The PPPC government allocated over 22,000 house lots in our last 4 years in office. Contrast that with 7,000 that they allocated in their 5 years in office. That is an honest assessment. That is the comparison that we need, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable mentioned housing communities like Perseverance and Prospect, where they made allocations, and has the audacity to stand in this House and talk about a comprehensive approach when 2 years later, the people in Prospect were without water, and it is under our government that they received water to their housing communities for the very first time. The Honourable member also mentioned squatting. Mr. Speaker, squatting is illegal. And I wish to rebut him by drawing this comparison between the two communities that he mentioned. He mentioned the squatting situation at Success, and he mentioned the Conservancy Dam in Canal. Mr. Speaker, the occupants of that in Canal number 1 were there for over 30 years peacefully, Mr. Speaker, versus what was going on in Success, which sprung up overnight and was a Ponzi scheme, Mr. Speaker. And so that had to be dealt with. It was politically orchestrated. And so we had to put an end to that. In any case, Mr. Speaker, coming back to housing, in any case, the APNU-AFC government never prioritized housing. A basic need like shelter, they failed to see the importance and the impact it would have on our people. And it is a violation of Article 26 of our Constitution, Mr. Speaker, the right of all Guyanese to proper housing accommodation. But I guess that shouldn't surprise anyone because that is their nature. APNU-AFC are serial violators of the Constitution. They have no regard for people's rights. They are the same bunch that attempted to rig our election. Let us not get carried away with their attempt to reintroduce and repackage themselves now as though they care about the Constitution and people's rights and the development of our country. Let us not forget who they are. And so, Mr. Speaker, in Budget Presentation 2020, Minister Edghill spoke about the restoration of the vibrancy and vitality of the housing sector. I stand here mere months later and can proudly report that it has. It has, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes the housing sector as a fundamental pillar of our economy. We also recognize that it has a significant impact on the lives of Guyanese. Our president has made it clear that the welfare of our people are at the core of government's developmental, transformational development agenda. Therefore, sir, in keeping with our manifesto promise to provide 50,000 house lots over 5 years, we will be allocating 10,000 house lots and distributing 7,000 land titles this year. Other measures to encourage and promote home ownership in this budget include the zero rating of construction materials, locally produced pre-stressed concrete piles, locally fabricated steel beams, locally manufactured roofing and PVC products, among others. We have also reduced the rate of taxation on industrial-grade cement from 15% to 5%. Further, we have raised the low-income ceiling for commercial loans from $10 to $12 million and increased the NBS ceiling from $12 to $15 million. Additionally, in 2020, we increased the mortgage interest relief from $15 million to $30 million. All of these measures, Mr. Speaker, demonstrate a comprehensive approach, not just to promote home ownership, but to stimulate the economy and create jobs. Mr. Speaker, this is us talking the talk and walking the walk by implementing the correct and appropriate policies to ensure that our vision sees the light of day. They do not know anything about implementation and execution. It is easy to go on Facebook Live and easy to jump in the ring and spew all kinds of irresponsible statements and rhetoric out there, but they do not have any clue on how to implement and execute any of their visions or policies, and that is why they're over there. It is all a gaff. Government will also be constructing 1,000 homes for low-income earners and young professionals. And Mr. Speaker, I might add that this has already begun in the Providence area. In addition to the 1,000 homes slated to be constructed in Region 10. And Mr. Speaker, we are not going to be like the previous administration and make outlandish promises we can't keep. So take, for example, in 2018, when the Minister, Valerie Patterson, was there, Guyana Chronicle reported on May 18, 2018, 8,000 houses by 2021. This was in 2018, and in 3 years, they're promising 8,000 houses. Mr. Speaker, they built 500 houses in 5 years. But they promised 8,000 in 3 years. Then, in 2019, in the period when they were illegal, and they were just months away from elections, the Stabrook News, December 11, 2019, carried this bold headline: CHPA aiming to deliver 5,000 house lots per year. Mr. Speaker, we are all aware of the tragic, dismal record of 7,000 house lots that they distributed in 5 years. But here they are, 3 months before elections, promising 5,000 house lots per year. So that is the record, Mr. Speaker. All gaffers on the other side. No idea on how to implement and execute. The sum of, I will go into some details now, Mr. Speaker, on specific allocations in our budget. The sum of $3 billion was allocated for infrastructure works. That is for roads, drainage, bridges, water network, and land preparation for Region 2 on the Neming. Region 3, Edinburgh, Anna Katerina, Cornelita, Ida, Stewartville, etc. Region 4, we have Little and Great Diamond, Providence, Monrepo, LBI, Annandale, among others. Region 5, we have Experiment. Region 6, we have number 75 and 76 Village, and Ordnance Fort Lance, among others. The sum of $1 billion was allocated for the upgrading of roads in the existing areas of Region 2, that is on the Neming. In Region 3, Tushin, Zeelat, Zeeburg, among others. Region 4, we have Farm, Covent Garden, Prospect, Peters Hall, etc. Region 5, we have Hope Lowlands, we have Hope, Experiment, etc. Region 6, we have Kilcoy, Chesney, number 76 and 77 villages. We have Ordnance Fort Lance, among others. Region 7, we have 4 miles and 5 miles Bartica. Region 9, we have Tabatinga and Culvert City. And Region 10, we have Amelia's Ward, Wismar, and Wisrock. So, Mr. Speaker, our housing program is spread out through all and across all of our regions. The sum of $1 billion has been budgeted for the construction of the 4-lane highway from Mandela to Eccles, while $1.5 billion has been budgeted to continue infrastructure works in Sophia, Diamond, and Parfait Harmony. The sum of $80 million was allocated for the installation of borehole, discharge assembly, and transmission main in each of the following areas: Stewartville, Metamere Zorg, CI, Edinburgh, Anna Katerina, Prospect, Little Diamond, and Great Diamond, Cummins Lodge parcels 1767 and 1768. For developing and improving the efficiency of the single window planning permission system, $100 million was allocated. And Mr. Speaker, this is the vision, the visionary type of leadership that we're talking about. Moving the planning permission system to an electronic one. This is how we are preparing now for the transformation that is coming to our country. This is how we prepare. This is the type of leadership that is steady, consistent, and has a wisdom to it, Mr. Speaker. That is the characteristic of Budget 2021. And so I move on to the Water Service Expansion and Management Program. Government plans to increase treated water coverage in keeping with Sustainable Development Goal number 6, that is access to clean water, reduce non-revenue water, and modernize sanitation facilities across the country. Under our Hinterland Water Supply Program, the sum of $344 million has been allocated. Given the aggressive nature of the program, I will make mention of some of the new projects slated for 2021. The sum of $40 million was allocated for the procurement of a new rig and well drilling materials to facilitate new wells in 2021. $20 million was allocated for the procurement of photovoltaic systems, electromechanical equipment, pipes, fittings, spares, and accessories for water supply systems. $10 million was allocated for the construction of a pump station and activation of a new well in Port Kaituma, while $14 million was allocated for the drilling of new wells, installation of PVs, storage, distribution networks, and service connections for the communities of Waramuri, Huradaya, Kans Hill, Wauna, Baramita, Arakaka, and Matthews Ridge in Region 1. $10 million was allocated for the drilling of wells, upgrade of PV systems, upgrade and extension of pipe networks, and installation of standpipes for the communities of Quibana and Manawarin in Region 1. For Anai in Region 9, the sum of $15 million was set aside for the upgrading of the distribution network, rehabilitation of elevated trestle, service connections, and installation of PV systems. For Ignatius, $15 million was allocated for the upgrading of the distribution network. For the communities of Juwala and Kamarang, Warawata in Region 7, the sum of $50 million was allocated for the drilling of a new well, installation of new storage trestle, and distribution network. $78 million in total was allocated for the drilling of artesian wells, installation of distribution networks, upgrading of PV systems, construction of elevated storage trestles, and service connections for several communities in Region 9. Mr. Speaker, the tongue of Lethem in Region 9 will also benefit from the construction of a GWI Lethem office, for which an allocation of $15 million was made, making it easier for the residents of that community to access the services of the Guyana Water Incorporated. The sum of $50 million was allocated for the installation of a water supply system at Kaibarupai and Monkey Mountain in Region 8. For the community of Taruka, $21 million was allocated for the drilling of a new well, extension of pipe network, and installation of service connections. Under our Coastal Water Supply Program, the sum of $500 million was allocated and includes the following activities. The sum of $75 million was allocated for the procurement and installation of water meters, $40 million for the procurement of bulk meters at well sites and DMAs, and $75 million for the procurement and installation of meter boxes. The budget provides $104 million for the procurement of service connection materials for 5,200 new services. We can look forward to wells in Wakenham and Parikabak Dam, for which the budget has allocated a total sum of $100 million. The sum of $101 million was provided for the expansion of the water treatment plants at Sophia, Eccles, Covent Garden, Grove, Friendship, and Virgin Nugent, benefiting over 50,000 residents. And Mr. Speaker,
For your benefit, Honorable Minister, you'll need an extension.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask for a 5-minute extension for the honourable member to conclude her statement.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are not afraid of going into details. We can stand here and list the details of our program and the details of our track record all day long, because we know that we know how to implement these things, and we know we will be back here to report that it has been completed. Mr. Speaker, under our urban sewage and water program, the sum of $298 million was allocated for transmission upgrade from Church Street to Cummins Street, and $100 million was allocated for the procurement of electromechanical equipment for rehabilitation to production facilities for regions 4 and 10. Mr. Speaker, I wish to conclude, and in my conclusion, I wish to caution young people. I have a message for them, Mr. Speaker. And I wish to caution young people and everyone not to pay attention to political rhetoric. Song bites like free up the weed has no meaning and does nothing if responsible legislative amendments are not made in this House. APNU AFC spent 5 years in government and did nothing to remove custodial sentencing for possession of small amounts of marijuana. Now they are suddenly concerned about changing the law and wanting to go far beyond that. They want to remove custodial sentencing for possession of up to 500 grams when we are recommending 30 grams. They wanted to sabotage that bill. They don't want to make useful, responsible recommendations we can work with. They attempted to fool and mislead young people into not supporting a good thing. And Mr. Speaker, this budget is a good thing. This government is a good government. Nobody deserves or has a right to be in government. You have to work for it. You have to earn it. You have to prove your worthiness to the people of this country. While the opposition wants to divide and speak with racial undertones, our president speaks about oneness and unity. He stood in this very house and spoke about how he will deliver that oneness and unity, backed up and demonstrated by actions in our short time in office so far. And so I caution young people and everyone who is listening to these debates, do not fall into the trap of those creating mischief. Do not allow anyone to make you feel guilty about supporting a government who is showing you that we are supporting you. Support good initiatives and support people who support you. Do not resist development. Mr. Speaker, I fully endorse and support Budget 2021.